Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Caswell Cooke Show. My name's Caswell Cooke, and I'm the host of this show that, well, for many of you that are tuning in, you haven't seen it before. But we started in 1995, believe it or not, when I was a kid, and we did a TV show for about 15 years and interviewed some really cool people from the Beach Boys to the Who, all kinds of great bands and politicians and folks. And then, I had kids and stuff, and we stopped doing the show. And last year, my friend Ben said, you should do this show again. And now we have this modern technology to stream live everywhere. And so we started doing the show again, and we have had some great guests so far this year. Some of the ones that come to mind, we had the great Peter Asher just a few weeks ago, and Gary Puckett from Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, Susan Cowsill, Tom Wopat from the Dukes of Hazzard. We've had all kinds of great people on here. So it's Denny Lane, Terry Sylvester, some cool cats. And tonight is no exception. So tonight we are broadcasting not only on the Mesquamaket Beach page and the Mesquamaket Drive-In page and the Caswell Cooke Show, because we're going to be talking about Mesquamaket, but we're also broadcasting on Peter Noone's page. So we have all of the Hermits fans from all over the world also watching us as well. So when you put all those numbers together, it's pretty big. So we're not going to waste any time, because my guest tonight, he doesn't even need an introduction, but I will say that he sold 60 million records, 14 gold singles, 7 gold albums. Would you please welcome, from Hermits and star of stage and screen, Mr. Peter Noone.
Hey, Caswell, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm having a dream life. Bit of a break from it, really, but I'm happily coming back soon. I'm playing in Mesquamatit.
Mesquamatit.
And at a drive-in near you, actually.
Now listen, Peter.
I look like that day. Look.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's what I'll be looking like that day.
Listen, can I?
Morning, feeling fine. That stuff.
Can you sign this when you come to town?
Absolutely, just so long as you do it from 6 feet away from me and no hugs.
Yeah. Now, speaking of drive-ins, because that's what we're here to talk about. Of course, we want to talk about you and your career. But did you ever think back in 1965 that, boy, in the year 2020, I'd be playing a drive-in theater in Mesquamaket?
No, it never came to our mind. But somebody suggested it quite a long time ago, like early March, and I thought, I can't imagine what that's like. And they said at the time, "Have you ever been to a drive-in?" And I remember my parents took me and my sister to a drive-in movie in Italy in probably 1955, whatever year Psycho came out. And we sat in the back of a car and watched Psycho. It was a Ford car. And we watched Psycho. And I never went anywhere near a drive-in for a long time until I was like a teenager. When you had to go to a drive-in because that was the only way you could, have close contact with girls apart from dancing with them.
When I was a little kid, we had a drive-in here in the town you're coming to, which is actually the town you're coming to is easy to pronounce. It's Westerly, Rhode Island. And we used to have a drive-in, and about 8 or 9 years ago, we decided, you know what, we haven't had one in 30 years, and it might be good to bring back some of that nostalgia. And boy, I'll tell you, it's been successful. And then this year, it's like taken off 7 nights a week. It's crazy. We're showing movies. We're having concerts, and we're so excited to have you come here towards the end of this month and play, which is going to be awesome. So, you've been dealing with the whole COVID thing. We were lucky. I was telling you that my wife and I went to see you in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, just before COVID. And you said you love the name Woonsocket. I think you wrote a song about it.
I've been followed by a Woonsocket. And I stole some of the tune and some of the vowels from Cat Stevens.
I was going to say.
I loved it, that Woonsocket place. I played there twice, actually. I played the same theatre twice. It's a great little old theatre, and it reminds me of the Liverpool Empire and the Sunderland Empire, which are places we used to play. The Beatles used to play. We all played this theatre thing. So Woonsocket was good, but the drive-in thing is really attractive to me because I've never done it. When I go on stage at Caswell, I always try to remember the very first few gigs, like at the Cavern, and it sort of centers me, because I remember that when you played at the Cavern, some of the people in the audience weren't that impressed with 15-year-old boys' music. So you just had to put a show together and be demonstrative in a way, lots of action, because if you were just another one of those, Nobody paid any attention. So you know, I think being out far away from people is incredibly similar to that distance that is created, that fourth wall thing in a place like the Cavern or the Oasis in Manchester, all the places that I put myself when I'm singing. People don't know I do this, but, you know, when I sing I'm into something good, I put myself in, actually not in the recording studio with all the teenagers that made the record. Everybody in the room was a teenager. I think Lek was 20. But I can remember hearing it for the first time on the radio. And when I sing it, I'm in that moment, which is, and it's in the Beachcomber. It's a club called the Beachcomber in Bolton. And the only reason it was called the Beachcomber, because it was on a canal. It was called the Beachcomber. And they had like a bit of a basket looking like a boat and a straw hat in the lobby. And that was the only thing that was about the Beachcomber. And I was in the kitchen of the Beachcomber getting ready for the same, you know, we used to do a show. We did it at the Cavern, we did it at the Oasis, and we're going on. And this Beachcomber was our place where we played the most. And we were in the kitchen. It was like 5:30 or 6:30, maybe it was 6:30. We were in the kitchen getting dressed because in those days, if there was a dressing room, it had gentleman written on it. And now they're letting us change in the kitchen because we've got a record out. And Carl Green and I, there was a big bag of potatoes. And you probably know from Rhode Island, Manchester and Bolton in those days, the Industrial Revolution was over. All the factories were deserted. Everybody was unemployed. We had a prime minister called Harold Wilson who kind of appealed to unemployed people. And there was a factory across the canal. You know, I can't really think distance. It was probably 15 yards from the kitchen. And Carl and I, every window in the factory was broken because it had been deserted for maybe 20 years. And kids, I don't know, there's some fascination with kids about throwing things through windows. And we threw a whole bag of potatoes, a 56-pound bag of potatoes, one at a time, in celebration, because that's how stupid we were. Celebration was throwing potatoes. And I said to Carl Green that day, I said, look at us throwing these potatoes. Our grandparents came to England from Ireland because they couldn't find a potato. And here we are throwing them away.
Now I didn't expect to hear that story tonight, Peter. So let's stay back there. Let's go back then. So you were Peter Novak before you went back to Peter Noone. What was Peter Novak? That was a stage name?
Well, it was actually Pete Novak.
Pete Novak.
You know what happened was that there was a band called the Heartbeats, and they played regularly at the Hartford Youth Club. Hartford or Shaw Hall Youth Club is down on Hartford Road, not far from my grandmother's. And I was living with my grandmother. So I had this massive amount of freedom because at 9 o'clock every night, they were fast asleep and deaf. So you could bring the band in there and rehearse, and they wouldn't even know. You could bring girls back and everything. So, but I walked over to this club, and there was a band on stage, Alan Wrigley, Steve Titterington, and they had a band, and their lead singer called Malcolm Lightfoot didn't show up. I think he'd fallen out with them or something. And Alan Wrigley came over to me, and he said, you know, Malcolm has not showed up. And I go, who's Malcolm? And he goes, well, he's the lead singer of our band. Do you know any of these songs? And he started, there was no such thing as a set list. Nobody wrote anything down even in those days. So everybody knew what, you know, you knew 40 songs and that's what you played. So I said, you know, this one and this one and this one. About I'll Never Dance Again by Bobby Rydell. I said, yeah, I know that. He said, you know the words? I go, yeah. Because for some reason I had the world's greatest record collection. And so I got up and I did all these songs. And during I'll Never Dance Again, I didn't know what to do with my hands. I'd never been a lead singer at all. You know, I'd been in the choir and I'd been the lead role in the thing. But now, so I put my hand inside my jacket like that, like Napoleon kind of thing, you know. My soul was a swaying. And, you know, I noticed a couple of girls, Angela Denner and Margaret Vasey, known as Angela Denner and Legs Vasey. I don't know why they nicknamed her Legs, by the way, but she was, and they were there. And during the song, they sort of looked over like, could that be that little twerp Noone guy singing? And I go, wow, I've connected. I want to. So we come off stage, and the other people in the band are pretty impressed with what I've done, obviously compared to Malcolm Lightfoot. Especially when he wasn't there. I was much better than when he wasn't there.
He wasn't a tough act to follow.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they come to me and say, would you be in the band? I say, yeah. When have you got any gigs or whatever you call them? Though, have you got any bookings? They say, yeah, we've got the Urmston Football Club and they said, so I said, okay, I'm in for it. See how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Let's get together and practice. And at the practice, I said, we got to give you a new name because you can't have Peter Noone. That sounds, this is before George Harrison and people with regular street names became famous. Everyone was Billy Fury, Elvis Presley, Clay Clare, or, they all had these magical, Shane Fenton. And so they said, we're going to name you Pete Novak. And I go, okay, Pete Novak and the Heartbeats. And Pete Novak and the Heartbeats morphed into Herman and the Hermits, and eventually Herman's Hermits. But though Steve Titterington, the guy who was the drummer in that band, we got some great videos of us must be 1962 at the Cavern. And we're fantastic. We didn't know we were any good. We were really, really good and tight. It was just, I think we went to the fortune teller because we were so simple, and it was simplified because that's all the knowledge we had. So it was just, there was no excess. It was all it was great. And like I said, I know Terry Sylvester. At the same time, the Escorts were playing there at the Cavern, and the Undertakers and the Mojos and all that. And we all knew
swinging blue jeans.
And the Escorts was like, when the Beatles made it, we go, well, we know who's next. When Gerry, people forget, but it was Gerry and the Pacemakers who had the first big hit from that Liverpool Merseyside thing.
Right.
And the Foremost and all that. And then the Beatles came and just wiped the floor with everybody. I mean, all my childhood, like it was like a giant shadow called the Beatles. And I found out by the time I was 18, I was starting to be able to think for myself. And I realized that the Beatles thought they were under a giant shadow of Elvis Presley. They thought,
right, that makes sense.
Did Elvis ever do that?
Now, speaking of Gerry, one time Gerry came to Mesquamaket a few years ago, and he came over and he said, and I didn't understand that there's two different English languages. Because he said, he goes, Kaz, I'm going to have a wee bit of a kip that I'm going to put on me cuzzy and have a paddle. And I looked at him as an American, and I was like, what did you just say? And then he translated, I'm going to take a nap, put on my bathing suit, and go for a swim. So when you've lived in America for how long now?
On and off for about 30 years, maybe.
So what are the words? What are some of the words that people in America have no idea what you're saying when you say them?
Oh, we do. I do them all the time because it's like I have a show on Sirius XM.
Oh, we know.
And I start the show with I'm Peter Noone, Herman from Herman's Hermits, and my show is called Something Good on 6. And some of the things I say may be true. And once I said some things I may say are a bit porky, and porky is a porky pie a lie. It just is rhyming slime. It's not popular in Liverpool, but because English people, it's a very small country, Nobody in Liverpool doesn't know 50 people in the next town and 100 people in it. It's a very people when they talk about the British invasion, they hardly ever connect all of us to being in a place the size of probably Rhode Island, and all seeing each other in every situation, at the record store, at the Wimpy Bar, which was like pre-Big Mac and all that. There was a terrible English thing called a Wimpy Bar, and if you wanted to see the Beatles, go to the Wimpy Bar. They're always in there.
Wow, that's
and you would sit in the Wimpy Bar looking through the window, and there was a jukebox, one of those jukeboxes on every table, and it was in Manchester. It wasn't even in Liverpool, but they're very close. It's a quick drive, it's like going from your place to Providence. So you would sit in the window, and there would be like a jukebox on a thing, and you'd hear like Chris Montez, Let's Dance, and Bruce Chanel, Hey Baby, and you'd look over, And those were the songs that John Lennon had put on. And then you would look
Wow.
through the window and you'd see the Hollies going into the guitar store. And then you'd see like...
would you look through any window?
Exactly. That was a good window to sit in. The Wimpy Bar, right opposite Barrett's music store. Can you believe it? And that became the hangout. And then once you got to the next level, which is kind of once you had a lot of dates, it wasn't even about records. You couldn't get a record deal until you had a following. Mm-hmm. So we drove around in we all drove around in vans, and in those vans I became friends, stopping and getting in fights with never with another band, but a lot of transport driver people wanted to beat us up because we had, like Beatle Cuban heel boots, tight trousers, and little pink shirts. And I mean, if I'd have seen me then, I would have beaten me up as well. But we used to. So I became friends with my band, strangely enough, because we were really 100-pound weaklings. But we became famous for being handy. People thought we were tougher than we were, because my mother had a coffee table. It was a coffee table this high, and I unscrewed the 4 legs from the coffee table, and we put them up our sleeves. So if we ever got in a fight, we would get these things out and bash people with them. And I'd explain to them, because my family was a bit more street than the other boys in the band. Not street, but harder. So I explained to them that you have to hit them quick. You walk in there and you hit them straight away, because if you don't, they'll grab it and they'll hit me with it.
You see, Peter, I had no idea that you were going to tell us how to defend ourselves tonight. You should teach
This was me explaining to the Hermits, who were kind of grammar school boys, really, just
right.
Really. I mean, you can't imagine Peter Asher getting in a fight in a transport cafe. No, really. But we had to. So 50 years later, well, 40 years later, I'm in New York, and I'm friends with Jack Bruce. And Jack Bruce says to me, I remember that time when we were at the Blue Boar in some transport cafe, and there was all broke out, and I don't remember any part of it. I'm sure it wasn't a fight I won, because I never, ever won a fight, ever. So, I've sort of popped people and they stopped, but I've never won a fight and gone, yeah, gotcha, none of that. So he remembers this thing, and he said, and you lads came in and you had the dobbers, and it was famous. All the bands were talking, wow, you see them Hermits that bashed all those blokes up with the things. I don't remember any of it. It's probably not true. So, but he remembers it. And then he says to me, and remember that time, you were already in the chart. You were already in the charts, and you were in the Cromwell Club. And, it's crazy. People remember stuff from that period, because we all knew each other. He was in a band called the Alan Bound Set or something. He was not even famous. And he was, he says, and I remember that Ginger Baker came over to me, and all he did was go, ah. He used to do that to lots of people, Ginger Baker, because he's completely mad. Ah, right in my face.
Now, you see, Jack Bruce scared the crap out of me. We were doing this tour. I used to be the road manager for Chad and Jeremy. And so it was about 10 years ago. It was actually Joey Molland that took us up to the original site of Woodstock. And it was Joey, Terry, the Turtles, a bunch of groups. And Jack Bruce was I forgot, it was like Hippie Fest or something. So we're all the next morning in the hotel, and everyone's sitting together, but Jack Bruce is alone at a table. And Terry walks up to him and says, "Oh, how you doing, Mr. Bruce? I used to be in the Escorts and the Swinging Blue Jeans." And Jack Bruce just went, "Rah," like that. Yeah. And then he was very intimidating. And then I said, well, I'm looking at all these guys. I'm like, you're the thing. I'm going to go sit with him. So I went over and sat with him, and he said, "Do you know how to cook the toast?" So I made toast for Jack Bruce at a hotel in Woodstock, New York. That's my Jack Bruce story, Peter.
Because he was a lovely guy. He was a really lovely guy and incredibly talented. He was just really. He's on that Mersey Sorrow, with your long blonde hair and your na 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 na. Great bass part on it. So anyway, he says, "I remember that night in the Cromwell Club in London, and you wanted a fight with Ginger," and I said, "He'll kill you." I said, I don't care. I'm going to get a piece of him before. And he goes, no, I mean, he would have killed you. He wasn't going to fight you. He was going to kill you. Oh, okay.
Do you know that your impression of Jack Bruce is very similar to the way Billy J. Kramer talks too, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Because Billy always says, Billy always says, I'm going to be honest with you, Caswell.
Well, the truth is, you know, these, my 4 friends.
So listen, Peter, I want to know something, because I mean, it's amazing the history you have, and I was born in 1974, so it was like
You missed it all.
I missed it all. But you're this guy, and my wife, by the way, said, "Boy, Peter like runs around the stage like he's a 50-year-old guy," which I guess at this time is a compliment. 50, right?
Oh, 50 is stretching a bit, maybe 42.
42, that's good. So, take us to that. We all know about the bands that played at the Cavern and stuff, but what was that actual venue like? I mean, it's been mysticized through time, and it's not even really there where it was. But was it really tiny? Was it really smelly? Was it sweaty? How long? I mean, what was it like down there?
Well, I kind of liked it because there were quite a lot of places just like that. That's just the one that became the famous because that's where the Beatles began, but the Oasis in Manchester. There were lots of places where you would have to go downstairs with all the gear, and that was it. Because I was the lead singer, I had the PA, remember? So it was pretty hard to get in and out. But the audience asked to be impressed, so it was a good learning thing because, like I said, they were never condescending. Now audiences are kind of jaded or condescending. Yeah. It was never like that. They were. It was always kind of, well, what have you got? The audience were in that, what have you got that's different from all the other people, because everybody did the same songs. The whole thing at the Cavern and all the period one, the Cavern was unique because it was a big deal to get a gig there for every band in England. I did it. The Ravens did it, and then they changed the name and became the Kinks. That was a big deal to get a gig at the Cavern in the whole of Britain. And there were no clubs like that in London where you say, "Oh, we got to play the Marquee." That wasn't even mentioned in the music scene. That was just a place where people later made it. So me playing the Cavern was always like a thrill, and the people who were there, it was like Bob Wooler, who liked Hermits. He was the manager, boss, whatever it was, and whatever you call those people who run clubs, and he liked us, and we were well behaved. And it was interesting because the Beatles were always well behaved. There was no Who stuff going on. You know what I mean? They were respectful to management. And a little known fact about the Beatles, I know everybody's an expert on the Beatles and everything. All I got from the Beatles is they were really nice guys. They were really nice guys. We were a little band coming up. They were always nice to us. They never go, get out of it. It was always polite and I used to not at the Cavern, but in the next stage, I would walk into the Beatles dressing room as if I was a friend, because I was so naive. I didn't know you didn't do that. They were doing a TV show in Manchester with people who'd done Beatles songs. And it just happened to be in the studio where the man at the gate knew me because I'd done a TV series there years before, and he thought I was coming to do the TV series, and the Beatles thought I was there to do a TV series. So I go in the cafeteria. It was called the cafeteria. This is not a canteen, it's a cafeteria. And we went in there, and I sat at a table with them without even thinking, this is kind of a bit odd. I just sat at them, like, hello. And it's got my sausage, egg, and chips on a tray, and sat down, had a cup of tea, and they're smoking Rothman's cigarettes, and lo and behold, I smoke Rothman's cigarettes too, so I'm like one of the boys now. And then they leave, and Paul McCartney goes in a dressing room, so I follow him, and I go in the dressing room, and he's talking to George Martin, and I just, oh, yeah, I'm probably 15 or 16. Oh, really? Yeah. And Paul says, yeah, we're talking about compression. And I go, oh, compression. He says, and Paul McCartney, a true gentleman, true gentleman, because I'm this little kid, but I'm sort of manageable little kid, you know. I'm like manageable. So he goes, well, you know, compression, like, you ever heard of Fats Domino? Of course I have. Well, you know, Fats Domino, when he plays the piano and then his voice comes in, sometimes the piano lowers in level. What we're doing is we're making compression so that the levels of the band don't go out when the lead vocal comes in. And I'm listening to this, and then George Martin looks over to me and he says, which Beatles songs did you record? The show was people who'd done Beatles songs, and that's the minute that Paul McCartney realized I hadn't ever recorded one of their songs.
Now, speaking of recording songs, tell us about your version of Dandy. How did you get that from the Kinks? Did they do it first? Did you do it? I mean, how did that come about?
I think, you know, we did it first. What happened was Ray Davies was signing a publishing deal with Alan Klein, and Alan Klein was involved in all of us. It was me, the Animals, the Stones, the Beatles. He got everyone. And we thought, well, this is kind of honor. This is an honor status. We've got the same bloke as the Beatles and the Animals and the Donovans and whoa. I wonder if he's after the Dave Clark 5. But we're in there, and Alan Klein partly can get you recordings of your songs by other people. And Ray goes, well, like, you see, you know that one, Dandy, that'd be a perfect song for Herman's Hermits, and I know him. And Ray said, well, I know him as well. I've known him longer than you. He said, well, I can get him to record that song. And Ray says, okay, I wanted to do it, but okay, let him have a go. So we did it, and we did a great version. And then the next, Lemmy did a version. You know that in the Rockin' Vickers? Mm-hmm. There's a version by Lemmy in the Rockin' Vickers, who was also one of those guys who was in a band when we all started out. In fact, I have a ticket of a show, which is the Rockin' Vickers, the Ravens, and Pete Novak and the Heartbeats, like really early. The Ravens became the Kinks, Lemmy became Motorhead, and Pete Novak became Herman.
When you go out on stage now, and you know your show is amazing, and I know you poke a little fun at some of the other artists because they're so much older than you. But but you know, what's it like for you to sort of have the 60s so alive in the year 2020? I mean, you know, with the Sirius XM show, with the crowds of people that still come to see you, with the next generations of people, myself included, that heard your songs somewhere else. Obviously, I probably heard I'm Into Something Good from the Naked Gun movie, right? Was it Naked Gun? What was the movie that?
Yeah, Naked Gun. Yeah,
Naked Gun.
It's also in a couple of Disney things as well. No.
Right, and so all these other people, as the years go on, experience your song. So, what's the difference between then and doing your show now?
Most people in the audience may not have bought a Herman's Hermits record, but Herman's Hermits were from a period where top 40 radio was the penultimate delivery system. And no one knows why, but Herman's Hermits got more plays on more stations and more things than almost any, you know, probably the Beatles a little bit more than us, but we were definitely second, you know, like Billboard and Cashbox. We beat the Beatles in plays in 65 because we put out 11 singles a year, and people, and they were all hits. So we had these 20 songs that people you may not ever have seen a copy of I'm Henry VIII, I Am, but I bet £1 million a lot of people heard that song. Whether they liked it or not, they still heard it. And the same with I'm Into Something Good, it sort of shows up again. And the big surprise, my friends who are in other bands come to see me and they go, the big surprise is There's a Kind of Hush. He said, when you do it, everybody in the audience gets a buzz. They go, there's a kind all over the world. And it is an actual buzz. It's incredible. And we didn't even know that. It was a double A side. We had No Milk Today and There's a Kind of Hush, thinking which one will go. We thought we were like the Beatles. We'll have a double A side. And
you'll have a singles. You'll have a Strawberry Fields Day in the Life, right? You'll have a double A side.
You know, because history will prove that sometimes the B sides become more popular than the A sides. Paul McCartney was on a Chris Montez tour. And, you know, Chris Montez had this, hey, baby, won't you take a chance? But Paul McCartney goes over to Chris Montez 50 years ago, and he goes, Chris, I just got to tell you, I'm going to genuflect here, because if I didn't see that song that you wrote, the B-side of Let's Dance, I probably wouldn't ever have tried to write a song. And I said to Chris, is that a compliment? You made it look so easy. Isn't that a great compliment? So you see, the stuff like that. Now, I know songs from B-sides. A lot of Beatles singles, we had different deliveries in England. We all came out different. The LPs are different. The Beatles chose the size of which way they came out. It was a second thing. We made all our records for the BBC. Beatles made all their records for the BBC and then pirate radio. They never thought about WABC and MCA Good Guy. They didn't even think about that. We made records that our friends would hear and go, oh, that's all right.
Now, when you came to America, I mean, tell us about some of those shows you were on. I mean, Jackie Gleason, Dean Martin, I mean, the Ed Sullivan Show. I mean, those are big deals, man. Like, what did you get nervous when you went on the Ed Sullivan Show? Do you remember it? I mean, obviously you remember it, but
of course I remember it. I remember them all. I remember Jackie Gleason, all of them. It was good because I was a very young guy, and the male brain doesn't fully form until 25 years. And I was out of show business by the time I was 25. I thought I'd finished, and I think what happened, we had a massive amount of respect for people who'd made it in the business, including the Undertakers and Jackie Lomax and Terry. Anybody who'd made it, we knew how tough it was. And if you made it and stuck around like Dean Martin and Danny Kaye and Jackie Gleason and Ed Sullivan and stayed around for more than the hit record period, and then play a few high schools and then go back to college. And because we were so respectful of them as personages, we were always in a good position. We only did the Ed Sullivan Show because we heard that the Four Seasons were going to be on it, and we wanted to meet them. And it was great because I was a big fan of the Four Seasons. It's beyond fandom. It's like I knew everything. I knew everything. I knew all the names of the guys in the band. They were like the Beatles to me, George and Billy and all. So I go into their dressing room and they're having almost a fist right up in your face argument. Like this. Hello, I'm Herman from Herman's Hermits, and look at that. And it was the argument. I stayed there long enough because I was so young and naive that I didn't know to get lost quicker. This is not a good situation. This is a bit of fun. I never knew this side of the Four Seasons. So I'm standing there, and the argument was which color jacket they were going to wear on the Ed Sullivan Show. And they had this trunk with all these uniforms, really uniforms, beautiful uniforms. And of course, Frankie won. They wore the jacket color that Frankie, I'm going to wear this one, you guys wear whatever you want. And that was it, right? So that was that thing. And I went to, and like Carl from the Hermits or Keith from the Hermits says, what's all that about? I said, they're having a fight over which jacket they're going to wear. I said, we don't have to have that kind of fight because we've only got the stage suit and the street clothes with us. We all got one suit that we wore on stage, and once, the rest of our clothes was like, and every night, it's kind of funny because we were straight out of school. So, most nights we would wash our hair in the sink in the dressing room and use a hairdryer to dry our clothes back at the motel. It was before motels had the ironing board, and they didn't have, because we could get back on the bus with Little Anthony and the Imperials and go to the next city. So everything we're learning about American show business is from Little Anthony and the Imperials, who were the inspiration for Herman's Hermits because they were so cool and so friendly and so brilliantly talented that we just went, wow, can I sit next to you on the bus? Yeah, come on, we're going to stop at Howard Johnson's, get the chicken pot pie. We never knew anything. They taught us everything we knew about show business. Because in England, it was all the same. Like Gerry Marsden we did a gig with Gerry when we were really little boys. And Gerry was a really good guy. And he's accidentally We're on this bill, Gerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Craner and the Dakotas. They spelt his name wrong, which was
Craner.
Yeah, for years we made fun of that until one time we showed up at a place and they had Gerry, Jerri, and the Pacemakers. So then Gerry and Billy, we still call each other, hey Gerry, how you doing? And
now, you know what's terrible? I don't want to interrupt your story, but when I was typing to your manager about some stuff, you know what autocorrect does when you say Peter Noone?
Peter Noone, yeah.
Peter Noone, yeah, it just separates the words.
So we did this, let me finish. So we did this gig at Swinton Palio, the Nelson Imperial, one of these places where big leagues, you know, it was Adam Faith and the next league, you know, it was definitely the Sounds Incorporated. There were all these big John Barry 7, Adam Faith. So we get a gig in there, but it's on a triple bill. Gerry and the Pacemakers, and they have the #1 record. But he's invited us on this tour. Gerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Craner and the Dakotas, and Pete Novak and the Heartbeats. And we get there, and Gerry goes, "Who are you?" You know, we walk into like, "Who are you?" Pete Novak and the Heartbeats. And Gerry like, well, let me show you the dressing room, Lance. And he takes us down the hall, and he opens the men's room door. we go, oh, you know, we're punked. The first thing that happens to us is we get punked on a tour. And it was like that. So lifelong friend Gerry. He has lots of problems with lots of people, but I've always been able to get on great with him.
That's awesome. Now,
the first moment is important. It was we got punked, 15-year-old guys getting punked by the old time.
Now, when the band broke up, or when you left the band, and then you went and tell us about your work you did with David Bowie.
I think I was still in the band. I think I was still in Herman's Hermits. I think what happened was David had this song. He had a bit of a career, and he was in a moment like a lull in between, I think, record deal contracts, lawyers, that business that comes to everybody who suddenly gets successful by surprise. So he was kind of languishing in songwriting world. He had a load of songs, and he played a song to Mickey Most. He played "Oh You Pretty Things" to Mickey Most, and Mickey said, "That'd be great for Peter Noone." And David said, "Oh, Herman's Hermits, yeah." And he goes, no, I think so. And Mickey gets me on the phone. You know, in those days, Mickey sat in this office on Oxford Street, and opposite, on the other side of the room, was a guy called Peter Grant, who became Led Zeppelin's manager, who was famously. And you would stand in the middle of them, and they'd give you hell. Really, Ronnie Wood told me that he managed to pass that audition where you sit between Mickey as they would do a thing called Take the Piss. And so I show up, and David's there, and he says, "Listen to this song." I go, "Oh, it's fantastic. What a great song." And I saw you at that gig at the Elephant and Castle and all this stuff. You know, it's just a light chat. And Mickey said, "I think it's your first solo single. I think that's got Peter Noone's solo single written over it." And David got all excited. And in those days, what you would do is you'd say, "Let's go over the studio and give it a bash or give it a go." You know, I know everybody makes this whole fascination about the studio and the. We didn't really have a clue. We didn't know what the green knob did even. There was a green knob there. What does that green knob do? We made records. What you did was try to capture whatever was going on in the room. So you needed good mics and somebody to run the sound. So David goes over and plays the song on the piano. And we realized that he's playing it in F sharp. And he said, "Well, can we do it in F? Because F sharp's not good for my voice. It's a bit too high." And he says, "I can only play it in F sharp. I can only play my songs on the black notes on the piano." So, okay, so we don't think we can play it, and we'll get somebody to kind of cover for it. We can't find anybody in England that day who can even attempt to play this strange, bizarre F sharp. So Mickey says, "Play it once, try and get all the way through it without making a mistake, and we'll go back and fix it." So David sits down. I remember we had a great bass player and a great drummer, famous people, and he plays it all the way through. He sits down and it's in F sharp, and he dun, 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 and plays the song the whole way through. And I go, "Bloody hell!" Mickey said, "We should fix that little bit there, that little bit there." And I don't know how you do that, but apparently they're going to get this tape and says, Peter, when it gets to this bit in the record, press this button here. I've got my finger on the button, but I'm not really paying attention. And it comes to where I think he means it. And I press the button and delete the drums. But I delete them for exactly 8 bars. Don't. When it comes to the second round like that. And everyone's going, we'll kill you, we're going to kill you. And then and David goes, actually, that's pretty good. That sounds pretty good. So we get it, and I go and sing it, and then for some reason, we get all these violin players in, which I think is a mistake. Mickey's trying to make it into a Herman's Hermits song. And it goes on and on and on, and suddenly, it's a Peter Noone single, and it instantly goes in the charts, and they say, you got to do Top of the Pops. And we go, oh, bloody hell, Top of the Pops. If you do Top of the Pops, and you have to play, we can't, David's going to have to play it, because we can't find anybody else who's going to play the song live. So they said, so Top of the Pops say, if you get the original musicians in the studio at Top of the Pops, the union will allow you to mime the track, not the vocals, just the track. So we show up there and we get in there and we stand in there. We've got Tony Wilson, who's the bass player from Hot Chocolate, who's a black guy. There's me, who supposedly used to be Herman from Herman's Hermits. Woke up this morning feeling fine, singing "Oh You Pretty Things." And we got David Bowie on the piano wearing a hat and a girl's dress with a flower in it, a flower in the hat, an aerial bender on guitar. So this is like the most bizarre Top of the Pops ever, and nobody's got a copy of it. There's copies of the music, but nobody bothered to keep a copy of this thing because we didn't. No one knew that there'd be an afterlife in show business. So get on the radio, be on the radio for a couple of years. You get some money. You buy a house in the country with a tennis court and maybe a swimming pool. Just don't let Brian Jones in it, and then you'll go back to work. And we never knew. So all this wonderful stuff that happened. I got on great with David. So I started to be like a fan, a fan who'd go to all these gigs. So I'm following him around to all these gigs, and the strangest people are showing up to his thing. But he has another song called Right on Mother, which is Right on Mother, you really blew my mind. I never thought we'd hit it off until today. And I go, I want to do that. So Mickey's got this other song. They said, well, he played me a song called Bombers. I like Bombers better than this. So now we're turning it now. Which of all these brilliant hunky-dory songs will Peter Noone do first? Let's do Life on Mars. We'll just do it on a piano, and David will play the piano. No, let's get this guy to play the piano because it'd be in a better key, because David only plays everything in the sharp and flats, and we want it in a song where the world can sing along. So we did Life on Mars, Right on Mother, Oh You Pretty Things, Bombers, All Clear, Cried the Captain, which is about bombers. His dad was in the Second World War like my dad, so we connect over that stuff. And it's just a great period because he was a spiffing guy. He was the real deal, Everybody that met him after me says, wow, he's a really good bloke, isn't he? Even Americans, those Saturday Night Live type people, they met him at some point in the career and they go, wow, that David Bowie was a really cool guy, a nice guy, and, you hear that a lot about the ones who stuck around. Like you hear that about Mick Jagger, that he's arrogant but a cool guy. Every time I see him at the party, I go, "He's a cool guy." He's got this look that says, "Don't come anywhere near me with a word like selfie in your vocabulary, because God will strike you down dead with a thunderbolt."
That is an awesome story. You must have really. What did you think about David Bowie's final album that he released when he died? That was amazing too.
Yeah, I even like the one he did with Soupy Sales Kids. There, I thought that was a great album. I'm a fan. I like the record. You did a record with Lulu as well, The Man Who Sold the World, which is a brilliant, great production. And there's just quite a lot of stuff. You hear those. I'm sure you've heard them. Those Freddie Mercury and David Bowie outtakes from
Under Pressure.
Vocals.
Yeah,
just their vocals. Whew. I mean, it's that thing that we can't really describe. The Beatles did it 400 times.
Right.
David Bowie managed to do it 30 times. Well, you go, whoa. And there's like odd bits in music, like It's like that Thunderclap Newman has got a bit in the record where what is his name, Jimmy McEwen comes in with like a really spacey guitar that is like Bowie-esque, and then the Thunderclap Newman piano solo, and you go, whoa, they got it. And then there's like Steve Wonder in Traffic singing, I'm looking for a girl with no face and no name, and you go, oh my God, they're close. And when a man loves a woman, he's nearly got that, whatever that thing is. Is it bliss? You know, I don't have any of that in any of my records. I just have a load of fun. But we're talking about David Bowie, who frequently took you to a place that you didn't know existed.
Now, when you played and had all those hits in the 60s, and I mean, obviously they were huge, then the 70s had to have been a much different period. You know, I've talked to a lot of artists from the 60s who, you know, had left their bands or the success had dried up for that type of music in the 70s. When did you notice that people wanted to hear it again? Was it the 80s when people started to get nostalgic for that music again?
We were too young for the oldies but goodies market. You know, it's like 1972, I think it was, we did a tour, which was just phenomenal talent. It was like Herman's Hermits, Gerry and the Pacemakers, Searchers, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas. And I'm forgetting somebody, but just that is enough. But there were 5 bands on it, and we showed up, and it didn't do business because it was too soon for the British invasion to return. You know, and the music was going more frequency, more FM kind of things, longer songs and all that. See, the 60s, what it was these little nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
Doom, doom. And then it became opuses. And it took a long time to get away from that. So most people were busy in the 70s. It just wasn't prime time for us. It all came back for me in around 1980. I was doing Pirates of Penzance, and I was doing Pirates of Penzance on Broadway, and I made a new album, and I saw that the audience, they didn't care about the 60s. They just cared about if you had any good songs and a bit of talent. Broadway is about that, you know. Oh, that's a good show. What's good about it? Well, it's got good shows and they're good songs, and it's a good story, and there's good dancing in it and all that. So I built a show, probably started about 1990 to create, I call it, it's like Oklahoma. You know, Oklahoma is a show, and you know what song they're going to start off with, and you know they're going to go, Oklahoma, well, the thunder, all that, you know, there's a bright golden haze. You know all that's going to happen. So it's a show, and you don't expect to, like, have any fireworks. You know, so people come to me expecting just to simply have a good time. It's a bit of a laugh, really, isn't it? It isn't anything extraordinary. It's like this older bloke who had some hits in the 60s, who's still got this amazing amount of enthusiasm for the period and for music in general, and is pretty proud of the songs that he got. You know, the only thing that I got that say Jackie Lomax didn't get is I got the songs. He's a better singer than me, but I got better songs than him. And, you know, the Hollies got a load of great songs. Hollies got a load of great songs. And, you know, the Rascals got a load of great songs. So, you know, all those ones that are still popping around, you know, are the ones with a lot of great, you know, Gerry and the Pacemakers have loads I play one of their songs every week on my show, and I haven't run out of you know, I'm the One, and, you know, they have a load of, and Ferry Across the Mersey and stuff like that. And you go, wow, Gerry, you were so brilliant a songwriter and brilliant guitar player. I used to go and see Gerry and the Pacemakers. They were called Gerry, Marsden and the Mars Bars. And you could see guys from other bands like the Beatles, like 16, 17-year-old George Harrison, watching Gerry's hands, because he could play and sing at the same time. You know, that was early days for that. No one was doing that in those days. Everybody wasn't Jimi Hendrix then. There was a few guys who, probably because Gerry's so cheap, he didn't want to pay for a guitar player. He says, I'll do it myself and I'll get the money. So, but he was the guy to watch, and nobody ever mentions that. Gerry is not only a fantastic singer, he doesn't even warm up. He sings like that. He gets straight out of the bed. He's just an amazing singer. And he's a great guitar player. He's thrown that away because You know, he was never called Gerry Marsden. He was called Gerry and the Pacemakers. It's like me, Herman. I get on the plane. Oh, look, there's Herman.
How does that make you feel? Are you all right with it?
It's okay, you know, but I wish I'd called myself Peter Noone so I didn't have to explain to everybody. You know, if it was Peter Noone's Hermits, it would have been a bit different, wouldn't it?
But, you know, when you talk about some of these songs, I mean, first of all, Mrs. Brown, No Milk Today, End of the World, This Door Swings Both Ways, A Little Bit Better, Henry VIII, Kind of Hush, Silhouettes, I'm Into Something Good, Can't You Hear My Heartbeat, Dandy, Hold On, Listen People's my favorite, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like it too.
This is a tremendous amount of material for you to have. Like, you are a lucky guy that you had all
Absolutely.
of these hits. I mean, it's
you know,
unbelievable.
Once I was with Roy Orbison in Calgary. We were doing a gig in Calgary, and we were sitting in the dressing room. You know, he was having the cheeseburger and the strawberry milkshake and everything, because we just sitting in the dressing room, you know, after a concert. And I go, you know, what is it all about? You know, because I've known him since 1964, because he was a really good. We did Top of the Pops. It was our first time on Top of the Pops, and Roy Orbison was there, and he was very nice. They had George Kennedy on guitar, and we were like, my God, look, it's Roy Orbison, and he was nice to us because all those big stars were nice. So we're sitting around talking, and I says, well, Peter, you know, you have to think of it like this. How many people do you know who can go on stage for 45 minutes and only do their hits? And I went, I could name like 50, but they've all gone now. You know, it was the Four Seasons, the Bee Gees, the Eagles didn't exist. Dave Clark 5, he said they couldn't do 45 minutes. So, you know, there was a conversation that we had with one of the most brilliant music. I mean, he's a fantastic singer, obviously. He's a fantastic singer. And, you know, so Tommy James wrote a book about the mob and all that stuff. And everybody's got a bit of mob stuff, because I think people like the idea of saving people money on the taxes. That's something that every guy in every band, everybody who's ever had a miniature success, someone shows up and says, they're going to kill you at the taxes. So you get involved with kind of bad people. So I'm talking to Tommy James about his book, and I see in the book, you say, you met me and Eric Burden in Birmingham, Alabama. We did the show, and for some strange reason, I remember it. I go, we did Montgomery in the afternoon, and then we all went down to Birmingham, and it was the big BAM shower of stars, and everyone did it. But you say in the book that I was nice to you, which is, thank you, I probably was, but you say that Eric Burden wasn't nice to you. I said, give Eric a break, will you? He's just a grumpy old man. He wasn't being mean. He's just not somebody, that's who I'm sort of protecting Eric's legacy, because Eric is not a bad guy. He's my friend. He lives down the road, and I've known him since I was a kid. So I'm protecting him. And he says, well, why did you even come and say hello? Eric didn't come and say hello. I said, it's a tradition in England that you go and you welcome the opening act, and you don't call them the opening act, you call them the support act. He said, what kind of a tradition is that? And I said, well, you know, Gerry Marsden did it to us, and we did this gig with the Beatles, and a couple of the Beatles came to our dressing room and said, hey, lads, thanks for being on the show. You know, and we were like gobsmacked, because that's so nice that they would even know our names. You know what I mean? He goes, well, I wonder where they got it from. This turns into a thing, you know, because I'm a bit obsessive about detail. So I go, I don't know where the Beatles. Let me find out. So I know Tony Bramwell, who's, you know, knows. Paul McCartney will say, ask Tony Bramwell, he remembers everything. So I call Tony Bramwell, I say, you got to help me out. Where did this tradition, why did the Beatles come down those stairs in Warrington to say, hey lads, thanks for being on the show? He goes, oh, well, it was tradition. So, but if it's a tradition, who did it to them? And he goes, oh, Roy Orbison. It was Roy Orbison who brought it to England, and it became an English tradition because Roy, when the Beatles were on this bill with him, I'm not sure if I saw it there, but when they played the Liverpool Empire, he went up 5 flights of stairs. He was a young man, but he went up 5 flights of stairs to the Beatles dressing room at the very top of the Liverpool Empire to say, hey, fella, thank you for being on the show, y'all. You know, that Texas thing. because it's a Texas tradition to be, you know,
Polite.
really polite and gentlemanly with whoever's on the show. Not because, in that case, you see, ultimately, they were already fans of him, but he turned around. Eventually, he became a fan of theirs. They were the opening act. Who knows what the opening act one day could be the biggest act in the world? And you're not going to choose them. I'm not going to guess who's going to make it next. Everybody I guess would make it didn't. I said the Escort's going to be next after the Beatles, then the Undertakers, then the Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders will be the biggest act in the world. But first of all, we've got to get the Hollies in there because they're going to be the next Beatles. They even look a bit like the Beatles. They can start writing songs, and maybe we'll take them on an American tour and make them big in America. And then, so everybody, I suppose, you know, it's lucky I'm not a judge on American Idol, isn't it?
But if they offered you that position, that'd be pretty cool.
I don't think so.
You were really great, by the way. One of the things I remember from when I was younger was when you hosted VH1's My Generation. That was a brilliant show, and it was so amazing.
I agree. I think it was a brilliant idea. It was a brilliant idea, but you know, as in all corporate stuff, what happens is somebody who runs the show goes to AOL or something, and they bring a new guy in who gets rid of everything. Every idea that the other guy had is now a bad idea. Now, how about this? Here was the idea. This man, Sumner Redstone, decided he would have a channel for everybody. I will have a channel for children and call it Nickelodeon. I'll have a children, you know, teen 11. He had the numbers wrong because now it's 6. But 11 to 15-year-olds will watch MTV. 15 to 50-year-olds will watch VH1. And 50 plus, they've got loads of money. They'll get Showtime. They'll watch boxing matches and pay-per-views. And that was pretty brilliant. And I was thrown into this thing, and I smelt the minute I got in this. See, I'm quite comfortable with oldies but goodies because it uses the word good. It doesn't say oldies and beaten up. It says oldies but goodies. So that, but a lot of people there, they worked there, but they wanted to be hip. They wanted to have girls in leather miniskirts at their gigs. And that never happens. You can't choose an audience. The audience choose the entertainment. Mm-hmm. So it very quickly turned, you know, we tried everything. We thought to get cool, and we had the interviews with people, and we'd get, you know, great people. We had Tom Jones and everybody that you could think of who had a record or book or anything. They would come and I would interview them, and it was brilliant. But the people who ran it didn't watch it.
But now you have a lot more freedom on Sirius XM, right? You can do anything you want there.
Well, I do anything I want. I probably hope the producer's not listening. You know, there's a lot of stuff. You know, they've got 31 million subscribers, and at least 11 of them listen to me every week. And I have fun. If it stops being fun, you know, I said, like, I think I was like, we used to play the Liverpool Locarno, and I was 15, and there was a really cool guy worked there called Terry Devine. And if you called him Terry Devine, he would probably beat you up. His name was Devine. Oh, sorry, Terry. Can I just call you Terry? And Terry Devine had this thing, and I said, listen, Terry, if I don't enjoy it, it's going to cost you more money. And I thought that should be the mantra for this band. And I was 15, and we kept that. If it's not going to be fun, you're going to have to pay us a lot more money. And I like that. So, luckily, we were cheap because everything was fun.
Now, let me ask you one last question. You've been with us for an hour, but this hour has flown by the way.
Oh, good.
Can you believe it?
I didn't let you talk much.
That's all right. When you go on tour and, you know, you ask for certain things in your dressing room and stuff, tell me the worst meal or the worst time you've ever had. Have you ever gone to a gig and there's like nothing there to eat or drink?
Oh, many times.
Yeah.
You know, once a couple of years ago, I did a date that I knew was going to be a problem, and it was in a very hot place outdoors, and they had the most incredible entertainment on it. They had a country stage, and BJ Thomas somehow was on the country stage, and they had a rock and roll, and they had an oldies stage, and oldies, and there was there were maybe in the afternoon, it was 108 degrees outside, and they were expecting 100,000 people, but there were maybe 11. And Jose Feliciano goes on stage, and I tell him, "Wow, there must be like 25,000 people out there." He said, "They're not reacting very much," because he couldn't see them, you know. And there's a girl from a band, one of those, you know, Shirley Elliott, you know, one of those bands from that period, like right before the Beatles. It's in his Kiss, and
that's where it is.
She says, "Yeah." She says the magic word. I go, "Oh, look at that. That's scary, isn't it?" And she goes, "Peter, the end looks a lot like the beginning." Yeah.
Well, we're gonna try really hard when you come to Mesquamaket Beach to make sure.
Well, but wait. The beginning looked like the beginning to me. That's what she said. I think the end is you don't wake up one morning. I don't care if there's 6 people in the room. I still do the same show. The audience only entertain each other. Remember, if you can give me something back, I'll be better. So I'm not afraid of the end. I think the end for me was probably 1970 in that bit after Herman stopped making American hit records. We had a lot of English hit records, lots of really good ones, and but there was no more. The thrill was gone, if you know what I mean. It just wasn't so. I'd lost my enthusiasm. I still got loads of enthusiasm. People go crazy. They go, "What's the matter with him? Is he okay? He's got so much enthusiasm, you know. Even in the post office line, I'm enthusiastic. You know, come on, let's go. Let's get these stamps. You know, craziness." Well, so you'll see. What is it called again?
All right. So it's.
I'll be in Massaquammet at the drive-in. It'll be great, and I believe there's a beach right there, right?
You're right on the beach, and it's Mesquamaket, which means in Native American place of the red fish.
Really?
Yeah.
And if it's that sort, I'll have the red skin.
We also have great lobster rolls if you like lobster.
Okay.
And we've got but so anyway, we wanted to make sure that in your dressing room that you actually have everything you need, and we even went out and bought you clean towels for the stage just to let you know.
Thank you very much.
Because it can be tough.
Made in America.
Oh, hang on, Peter.
Get on.
Oh, geez. You're going to make me find out,
Don't worry about it. I'm just giving you some rider trouble. You know, my rider is the smallest one in the world. I insisted, and I put somebody in my group wants vegan food, and somebody wants this diet soda. And I would go on tour and I'd see people with this South African wine. I said, coffee, water, towels. Coffee, water, towels. And the drummer said, "Can we get tea as well?"
You know what? Do you know what Dean Torrance does from Jan and Dean on his rider? He's really funny. He says, "I want M&Ms with only W's, no M's."
He's a good guy. You see, there's a guy who stood the test of time. He's a really good guy.
Well, he's played at Mesquamaket too, so we're fortunate. And in fact, Eric Burden played at Mesquamaket. And by the way, our Eric Burden story, we went and picked him up. We brought him over, and I said, "Eric, there's a meet and greet." And his wife or his girlfriend said he doesn't like those. But to honor the contract, he walked over, he looked at one person and went, "Ugh," and then went to the dressing room. But he put on a hell of a show.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
So we want everybody to buy tickets to the show coming up in July 26th in Mesquamaket Beach. You can go to mbadrivein.com and buy the tickets right there and come see Peter. And you can honk your horns when he's on stage. And by the way, people can sit outside their car in their chairs and stuff. It's not like you have to.
Yeah, I saw on your website there. It's very interesting. Yeah. I'm excited. And I think I'll know lots of people who will show up. A lot of people will show up.
Absolutely. Well, Peter, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. And we're so looking forward to seeing you in person. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person as well.
I look forward to seeing you. And I hope to see all you lunatics there as well. Thanks, Caswell. Thank you.
See you later. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that was awesome. Peter Noone, Herman's Hermits. Thank you to all the folks that are watching on Peter Noone's site, to all the people watching on the Mesquamaket site and everywhere else. He's an amazing guy, an amazing interview, and we love him. We love his music. And so I encourage all of you to buy tickets for the show. If you can make your way to Rhode Island, we've got some great hotels right near the venue. And it's going to be a really different type of show. And Peter will be on the stage, and we will be putting him up on the big screen above. So you'll have a great view no matter where you are in the parking lot. It's right at the beach. It's a really cool beach. We love it. As you can tell, I'm passionate about where I live. And we invite all of Peter's fans to come down and to join us. So wherever you are, if you can make it to Rhode Island, come and see us at the end of the month. And Peter's going to always put on a great show. And it'll be exciting because it'll be at a drive-in. So it'll be something you've never seen before, folks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching the Caswell Cooke Show. I will see you guys next time. Have a good night.